Yeah, Bitcoin decided to wake up and join the party. It's been laying kind of dormant while the market's been seeing some nice rallies. So what are you looking at? What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, so I mean, we've definitely had an impressive move on Bitcoin, right? So I mean, Bitcoin has finally woken up. I think that you see a lot of this hype building very, very quickly, which for me is a little bit of a concern, right? And it's very rare that a bear market ends with euphoria coming in so quickly. Usually the first 10, 20, 30% after a bear market, investors are very, very skeptical. And that's not what I'm seeing this time. And that makes me a little nervous, to be honest. It does. I think that people were just kind of biding their time and they're just jumping back on the bandwagon. I'm seeing incredible pumping across all social media platforms.
Well, Bitcoin's been basically flatlining for the last several months. So it's understandable. Everybody's getting
Yeah.
excited. The thing that's interesting is nothing has changed from the Fed standpoint.
Right.
Nothing's really changed in inflation. It's still over 6%. Nothing has changed from, tightening of financial conditions and recessionary expectations. In fact, I think that is potentially getting a little worse. And we're going to find out with the earnings and, forecasts and things like that coming up here in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of where I am at too, is that there hasn't been any change. You could argue that the Fed is coming to the end of their hiking cycle, but that doesn't mean interest rates are going to go back down, right? I mean, we figure the Fed funds policy, level is going to remain at 5-ish% for most of 2023. So you don't have that dropping of rates that can stimulate kind of the Bitcoin surge again, like past bear markets ending, nor do you have quantitative easing going on, both of which are unlikely to come in this year. So for me, this is very classic of a bear market rally. And that's why I'm a little skeptical. I had some longs going into this. I was talking about a potential breakout. We've gotten that, but I always said it would be a breakout that would get bulls to kind of jump back on the ship, but it probably is a shorter lived bull market run, intra bear market, right? So let me show my charts here because I think there's some cool things to look at. So number one, if we see this chart here, right, this is the bull run that we've just experienced. Incredible, right? I mean, we haven't experienced this in quite some time, but number one, I mean, it looks big, but if we zoom out on the chart, I think it's important to keep it in perspective, right? This is what we're talking about. This is what's getting all the hype, is this move up in Bitcoin. And again, like you said, very normal because people had been kind of lulled to sleep with no volatility. Since Tesla has topped out, it had moves of 35%, 64%, 50%. And then even down here, you're at 18%, where it's, here we are with Bitcoin up, what, 25, 30% off of the lows. I mean, that kind of falls right in the midst of these moves that we've seen in Tesla. And I do liken Tesla and the type of people that are investing in Tesla as the same that kind of get involved in Bitcoin and kind of have that mentality. So I think it's important. You could look at any stock. I mean, you could look at Apple, Amazon. A lot of them have these bear market rallies where they jump 30, 40, even 50%, but then ultimately find themselves making new lows. And so I would just caution people out there. Yes, yes, it would be great to know that Bitcoin has made a low pivot and maybe we're starting to head up.
Right now, it's just because Bitcoin is on the risk asset level like everything else. And I mean, the Fed is going to tell us when it's bull market on, and the Fed
Right.
has said the opposite. So you can't believe the Fed, follow the Fed, and bet on the Fed on the way up, and then completely ignore them on the way down. Albeit, I think a lot of the markets and a lot of the institutions out there are still doubting the Fed's resolve. So we're kind of in
Yep.
that cat and mouse game. To Bitcoin, zoom out and look at Bitcoin from the peak. Bitcoin's had 40, 50% rallies or more since the peak. I mean, back in
Yeah.
June, it had a 40 something percent rally. Up there at the Do Kwon, I mean, we had some 60% rallies during that buying spree. That was Michael Saylor and Do Kwon there.
You could argue, just like you're saying, is that this is at this point we don't know if this is anything bigger yet. Yeah, in fact, what I think is so amazing about this is that you could see these moves that were occurring in stocks were precursors, and what it was telling you was that it was a risk on trade again, which then, if you connected the dots, gave us a heads up that if it's risk on in Bed Bath Beyond, GameStop, AMC, all these things were running up ridiculous amounts. Wouldn't it make sense that the crypto market was going to get a squeeze as well? And again, in December, you have lots of pressure from people saying, all right, I made money in crypto early in the year. I booked profits on Doge or this or that. Now I have losses on the rest of my portfolio. Let me sell to kind of not pay taxes or limit my tax liability. I can't tell you how many times I went on interviews in the last 3 weeks and just said, Solana, yeah, I mean, it's absolutely potentially could go to zero, but there's a trade here. And the trade is very simple. It's that, you have an $8 coin that could go to zero. So you're risking $8, put 2% of your portfolio in it, but it could also go up 300%.
So if you look at Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, all the major altcoins, in conjunction with Bitcoin, they have look at that, the exact same price action pretty much. And
so I've actually started accumulating shorts on the S&P. I wouldn't call myself all in on my positions yet, but I'm in the camp that, we could go a little bit higher, but I do think that we're in a position here where we're going to see a bigger drop in the S&P. And I think this is, again, the same kind of thing. You're getting this asset kind of re-risking, if you will, people taking risk again, but we're now into some key levels on the S&P. The average investor has not experienced, a long bear market in stocks. And that does concern me, because it makes people think that, oh yeah, maybe we'll have a dip, but we'll roar back to all-time highs in 6 months.
Especially without the Fed. We're in an environment where the Fed says we are raising rates. We're not bringing rates down. We're not stopping. We're not pausing. They're going to slow the pace. We might see 25 basis points at the next meeting in February, but until the Fed says we're done, and then when they do, once the Fed pivots, then you bottom after that.
The only thing I would say also is, historically, when the Fed actually does pivot, the markets have actually sold off a lot more. So I think people have to keep that in mind, is that just because the Fed pivots doesn't mean all of a sudden bull market on again. I think initially you're going to get that reaction, right? People have been programmed to say, oh my goodness, this is fantastic news. But if you look at past scenarios where the Fed has pivoted, we've actually seen a significant decline in stock markets. Here's 2001's low, and then in 2002, the S&P made lower lows. But then 2003, and look at this. This is really a cool chart, because what you can see here is there was a bottoming tail, technical bottoming tail, and then we retested it once, twice. And the fact that it couldn't break, that finally was telling you that there were too many buyers down here.
The good news and the positive note on all of this is there's going to be a huge opportunity once this is all done and the Fed says, we're out, and the market does bottom. And there's going to be plenty of time. It's not now. I'm not going to say it's not, and it's definite. We don't know. Nobody knows what the markets are going to do, but it's not very likely or probable that we're going back into a bear market all of a sudden right now. They've been seeing.
And I think that point is such an important point to make, is that the Fed does not want to see crypto rallying back strong. The Fed does not want to see the stock market up significantly. In fact, I think it was 2 meetings ago where the initial statement from the Fed came out and the markets ripped up. And then Jerome Powell went to his press conference and he just said you could see him almost like looking at the market on his phone and then being like, oh, I don't want to rally. And then he just hammered the markets, and then the markets collapsed.
That's just the reality of the market. It's unfortunate, but it's controlled basically, by the Fed and what they're doing. It's all about liquidity.
It is. That's what it's all about. How much money is in the system.
Awesome. Well, Gareth, I appreciate you taking time out today, man. This was awesome. I'll get this out there and we'll see you on the next one.
Awesome, Greg. Have a great one. Take care.
You too.